Hi, this is Andre. Let's take a look at presets on the Echoplex Digital Pro. Thank you very much to Steven Clements for commissioning this one. Presets are a way of storing different combinations of all of these different parameter settings and being able to switch between them at the push of a button. To start with, let's take a look at what our current situation is. Long press of multiply and reset. We have 13 different loops. This is a totally oddball random combination of parameters I put together. 13 loops, auto record is off. Loop copy is off, switch quantize is off, loop delay is loop, quantize is eighth per cycle is 128. This is not something that I would ever use in the real world, but I just wanted to get a bunch of really obvious settings. The idea of presets is that you can call up different combinations of settings. So the easiest way to call up a preset is when you're in global reset, and again, that's if you do a long press of record and a long press of multiply. When you're in global reset, the mute and insert buttons will scroll you through different presets. Insert will scroll you down, mute will scroll you up. So I am going to go to preset number 1, and when we leave it there for a second, it will automatically load. Boom. So the reason I had all the goofy settings in the previous state is that now you can easily see more loops is set to 4, auto record is on, loop copy is sound, switch quantize is set to cycle, stutter mode, quantize off, eighth per cycle is something reasonable, etc., etc. Let's switch to preset 2. So here again, you use the mute button to go up, you use the insert button to go down. Let's switch to preset 2, and that loads. This is a slightly different combination, so now more loops has been set to 11, auto record, and loop copy and switch quantize are off. Loop copy is loop, quantize is set to eighth. We have a slightly bonkers setting for eighth per cycle. So the idea with presets is that you can save different states rather than having to go through and manually change every parameter in the parameter matrix to get yourself to a certain point. You can have all of those parameter values combined in a certain way and then call them up as presets. Now let's check out a few different ways of accessing presets, and then we will get into actually storing your own presets. As we've talked about, the easiest and most direct way of accessing presets is when you're in global reset. So long press of record, long press of multiply, and mute and insert will scroll you through different presets. So here I'm gradually scrolling through different combinations of presets, and so on and so forth. What you can also do is access the preset parameter state. And to do that, you're going to go down to the second parameter row from the bottom. In the next loop column, you have presets. Once you press that, now you've actually entered a preset state where these 5 buttons are going to do different things until you get out of the parameter value. So this is kind of a separate level of depth of parameter editing here. When you hit the preset parameter, this puts you into a special preset editing mode. Now, when you're in the preset editing mode, mute and insert do the same things. Those will scroll you up and down through presets. But the main difference here is that it does not automatically load a preset when you stop at one. So right now we're still scrolling through different presets. If you want to load a preset, then you press record. And then as soon as you exit the parameters, you can see now we're back to what for me is my default number 1 preset, with more loops being 4, loop delay is stutter, quantize is off, etc., etc. If we want to go to a different preset, let's do the same thing. Second parameter row from the bottom, next loop column. Let's say we want to go to preset 2. So there we are. Then to press record, we'll load that preset. Long press of parameters gets us out of there. And now we're in preset 2 with the 11 different loops. Auto record, loop copy, switch quantize is off. Quantize is set to eighth per cycle 32, etc. And again, just about all of these different parameter rows could be set to something different if you're so inclined. I'm using the top and bottom parameter rows just because they're really obvious when they change. Long press of parameters gets us out of here. Now, you can also do this while you have a loop going. So let's start up something. Let's say that I wanted to start with the combination that we have on preset 2, and then at a certain point I want to go to preset 1, but I don't want to stop looping, I want to keep looping. So you go back to presets, go into the preset menu, and we go back to preset 1. Then you hit record to load that. Now the one big difference here is that when you get out of that, more loops is still going to be set to 11. That's because you can't really change the more loops value once you've started up a loop. The nature of the Echoplex architecture is such that you can't change the number of loops you have in memory after you start looping. So that's an example where the preset is actually going to ignore what the more loops value is if you already have a loop going. Just about everything else is still going to be intact from preset 1. So auto record is on, loop copy is sound, switch quantize is cycle, stutter mode, quantize off, etc., etc. But it didn't switch more loops to 4 because you can't do that when you have a loop going. So there's a specific list of things that are and are not affected by presets and switching. I'm going to include those as screenshots from the EDP manual as an appendix at the very end of the video. Now let's check out how to write and store your own presets on the EDP. Let's come up with a combination of parameters. Let's have more loops be 13. Let's have 8th per cycle set to 13. I know this is very unlucky of me. Let's have quantize set to 8th. Let's have threshold set to 13. No, just kidding. Let's have it set to 3. I'm doing these particular values not because they necessarily have any usefulness in the real world, but because I want it to be really obvious when we call up this particular combinations as our own preset. So more loops is 13. No, come on, there we go. More loops is 13. 8th per cycle, 13. All right, our lucky 13 preset is going to be stored at preset 13. So we're going to come down to the presets parameter in the next loop column. We are going to scroll up to preset 13 using the mute button. You could also get there backwards using the insert button. Now we're at preset 13 and we're ready to either load whatever is in preset 13 or store our current state as a preset. That's what we want to do. We want to store this as preset 13. So now that we've arrived there using insert and mute to get us there, instead of pressing record to call up whatever is on that preset, we're going to press overdub to store the current state as preset 13. And you need to hold it down for a little while. There it goes. When you see safe, SAF, that means that it has saved that state. So now let's double check and make sure that that's the case. Let's go back to preset 1. And this is my bread and butter bank. For me, it's a bread and butter bank. More loops is 4. Loop delay is stutter. 8th per cycle is 8. And now let's go back to the lucky 13 preset we just saved. Boom. More loops is now set to 13. 8th per cycle is set to 13. Let's do a slightly different set. Let's say that we want to set more loops to 3. 3, come on. We want 8th per cycle to be set to 3. Let's say we want to save that as parameter 14. So again, we come down to the second parameter row from the bottom, go to presets, and we want to save this as 14. Scroll up to 14. We're not going to press record because that would load whatever preset 14 is. We're going to press overdub to store this as preset 14. Get out of there. Now preset 14 is what we just had. Go back to preset 13. And we have our lucky 13 set of parameters, 13, 13. Let's go up 1 to preset 14. And that's the one that we just stored, where 8th per cycle is 3, more loops is 3, and so on and so forth. Now let's look at a couple of safety disclaimers about using presets. The first is that if you have the insert mode set to half speed, then you won't be able to use the insert button to scroll through presets when you're in global reset. The reason is that the EDP can actually be set to record in half speed before you start recording. So you could push half speed, start recording, and then after you've recorded, go into full speed like that. In order to be able to enter half speed before you record, you have to be able to use the insert button while you're in global reset. So if your insert mode is set to half speed, then you're not going to be able to use the insert button to scroll through presets in global reset. You can still use the mute button. You're just going to have to go a little around the long way, potentially, if half speed is set to insert. If half speed is not set to insert, then you can have it set to anything else. Now here's another disclaimer. Let's say that we want to store this as a particular preset. Let's say it's going to be preset 9. Let's say that's going to be preset 9. All right, presets. I want to store it at preset 9, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. If you were going to store it, you would press overdub. If you were going to recall whatever was on preset 9, you would press record. If you press multiply, this is actually going to reset preset 9 to all of the factory default parameters. So maybe that's what you want to do. Maybe you're like, I want to start from a clean slate. I want preset 9 to be whatever the stock default Echoplex parameters are. Press multiply, and now it resets. And if you get out of there, you'll see that more loops is set to 1. You have all of your bread and butter factory default values here. So if you do want to find yourself getting there, that's okay. Here's one other warning. If you do the global reset, that is, if you hold down the parameter button while you power up, you can reset everything to the factory default state. However, if you do that, you're also going to erase your presets. And I know that because before I recorded this video, I accidentally erased my presets by doing the global reset. So in the category of lessons learned the hard way, understand that if you do that, if you press down parameter while you power up, yes, you will reset everything to factory default, and you will also lose your presets. So if you want to start with a particular patch with all the factory defaults, I would do it from the preset menu. So maybe we want preset 14 to be our bread and butter factory default. Selecting preset 14, right now it has that 3 loop thing set up. Go to presets, preset 14, press multiply. That restores preset 14 to factory defaults. Now, one less widely known feature of the EDP is that you can actually configure a loop to start up at a particular tempo before you even record the loop. To do that, you go to global reset, long press of record, long press of multiply, and then if sync is set to either out or OUS, you press the undo button. Right now, that is a tempo value. That's at 120. If you use the feedback button, you can actually dial in different speeds. So these are beats per minute right now. And I'm adjusting the feedback knob to get us through different combinations. Let's say that we want it to be 80 beats per minute. Come on. 80 beats per minute. Oh, come on. 80 beats per minute, please. Good grief. Stay. Okay, 80 beats per minute. Now, let's say this is a preset. Going to come down to presets. Let's go ahead and keep preset 14. Going to press overdub to save that. Good. Now we're done. And you can see that when you access that, you already have a loop length calculated, even though we haven't recorded anything yet. That's because it's using the tempo that we just set and calculating a relationship to that using the 8th per cycle parameter. So right now, 8th per cycle is set to 8. If we change that, let's set it to 16. Now the loop length is going to change because we changed the 8th per cycle parameter. So it is still clocking to the internal tempo that we just saved, but it's a different relationship. If we have a lower 8th per cycle value, then as soon as it hits the downbeat of the cycle, there we go. Now it's a much shorter loop length. Now, let's go to a different preset. Going to do it the old-fashioned way. Let's go back to preset 1, load the preset, get out of there. All right, so this preset I don't have any tempo information stored on. Let's go back to the preset that we were just at. And there we go. We go back to that preset, and as soon as you press undo, it already has 80 beats per minute stored as the tempo. There's a couple of presets I have in here right now that have different tempo settings. Global reset, I'm going to scroll up to preset number 3. That one also had a tempo of 80. I guess I really like 80 beats per minute. Long press, global reset. I believe preset 4 has a different speed. There we go. So you can see as soon as we access preset 4, that starts beating a lot faster because the internal tempo is 196. If we go back to preset 3, long press of record, long press of multiply, insert goes down 1 notch. Now that's beating a lot slower because the tempo for this particular preset is 80. So now it's a slower tempo. That means that the overall loop length is going to be slower, even though 8th per cycle is the same. 8th per cycle is 8 on that preset. If we go back to the faster preset, Still beating a lot faster, but we still have the same 1/8 per cycle value. So basically I have a slower tempo on preset 3 than I have on preset 4. And then if you start recording, then you're recording automatically in multiples of that particular tempo. And different presets can have different tempos stored. Finally, if you're using MIDI control, you can also access different presets by sending program change commands. This is probably the most direct and elegant way of doing it because you don't have to scroll through any kind of parameters and you don't have to be in global reset. You just send a program change command for presets 1 through 15 and it will switch them immediately. You can do that while you're in reset and you can do it while you have a loop going. The only real disadvantage to that is that you need to have a MIDI controller that will send program change commands, but fortunately those are pretty common types of commands to send. So this has been a quick look at presets on the Echoplex Digital Pro. Thank you very much to Steven Clements for commissioning this one. I'm going to have a couple of screenshots right after I sign off here to show you more details about parameters that are and are not stored with presets. Thank you as always for tuning in, and I will talk to you guys soon. Bye-bye.